Okay, and welcome to our 20th Shiur. So, just for introduction, we have two raffles this week for last week's Shiur and for Mesilas Shabbos of last week. So, if you did a Banas for Mesilas Shabbos this week, please make sure to go online and fill out to be in next week's raffle, as well as to fill out today's questions for our very exciting topic. We also discussed briefly this topic in this week's Banas Masiv. So for those that know or don't know, we now have a weekly beautiful Chabad Youth newsletter, and in it has of course, the advertisement for doing your own Masiv Banas, and there's an actual program inside with a story, some fun games, and Advar Torah. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you pick up your newsletters, of course, and other exciting news. Next week is going to be Lag BaOmer. We have a very, very exciting event coming up. So stay tuned. It will be, Be'ez Hashem, announced in the next 24 to 48 hours. Also, we're slowly collecting material for those that were promised the special arts and crafts Sphere Omer. So, okay. Let us begin. We'll take about 20, 30 minutes. Okay. So today we're going to discuss, of course, Pesach Sheni. You're going to touch upon it in school a bit, but let's go a little bit deeper to what its real meanings is. Let's begin with a simple story. Of course, I'm going to tell you actually something very interesting because it's very important for later. Now, Chumash Devar Bamidbar opens up with the story, different parts of counting the Yidden in the month of ER, important, okay? Very important to note. The Torah tells us that they counted these in an ear. That's how Chumash Bamidbar opens up. Now, a couple of parashas later, it opens up with a story that happened in Nisan, okay? A little bit earlier. And what happens is it's the beginning of the Yidden first year in the Midbar. It's 1 year after Pesach. And of course, now it's time to do again the Pesach Sheni. This is the first formal mitzvah because last year they were still Mitzrayim. The Torah has not been given yet, so it was a mitzvah, but not the same way. Today, only after Mount Torah can we do mitzvahs in a special way. Now, Pesach, of course, Pesach comes, everyone's got to grab a sheep, and some people come crying to Moshe. And they got a problem. We will get soon to our first question. Of course, our first weekly question is, what's today's Sefer Mitzvahs? We'll get to that in a moment, but let's first get to the story. And to get to the next part, we'll first say Sefer Mitzvahs. Okay. Now, they said, Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not fair. What's not fair? We're tamei. We're impure. And we can't bring the carbon Pesach. I know that. That's the halacha. If you're not pure, you could become impure by touching a dead person, then you can't bring the Korban Pesach. But it's not fear. Well, what's not fear? That's the halacha. But why should we lose out? So, why were they impure? Now, that's our second question. Why were they not able to bring the Korban Pesach? In the Midbar, they were impure. Now, there's an argument of why they were impure. The more famous reason is because these were the Jews that helped carry Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik's bones, they were very involved in a mitzvah, but that made them impure. And therefore, they could not bring the Korban Pesach. Others say that if you remember the beginning of this week's Parsha, this last week, and in the middle of, in other words, yesterday's, and the middle of last week's Parsha, a very sad story with Aaron's children. Aaron's children, two of them pass away. And who takes them out of the Mishkan? So Moshe Rabbeinu asks the uncles to take out, they were from Shevet Levi, and he asked them to remove the Nebuch, the two dead children, from the Mishkan. Of course, that made them Tameh. This happened on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So, by the time it came for time for Pesach Sheni, they cannot bring the carbon. Now, this is interesting, which comes to our next question. The impure Yidden thought, there's no point in asking Moshe. You can't change the mitzvah, right? Is that true or false? Did they think, well, why should we bother asking? Well, you would have thought that they show. Why are you asking Moshe Rabbeinu? What, he wanted to change the halacha? The Shulchan Aruch said that if someone is impure, you can't do it, right? Well, of course, the Shulchan Aruch wasn't then written yet, but that was the halacha, that was the rule. What are you coming complaining to Moshe for? It's not fear, we're tummy. Right, I understand that. I know it's not everything in life is exciting, and you're tummy, and you can't bring the Korban Pesach. So did they come complaining? Or did they think that, well, what's the point of complaining to Moshe? You can't change it. But of course, that's false. It's false. They didn't think, why should we complain? Regardless, they said, we don't care. We just want to, why should we miss out? Now, Moshe said, I hear you. I don't know what to answer you. I mean, Hashem told me that you have to bring a Korban Pesach. And if you're tummy, you can't bring the Korban Pesach. So I don't know what to tell you guys. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who was obviously the only Navi that whenever he wanted, he could turn to Hashem. And that's what he does. He turns to Hashem and he says, Hashem, these Yidden are begging and they're saying, it's not fear, we're upset. How come we can't get involved? Oh, okay. What does Hashem respond? Our next question. Hashem actually amazingly responds, they're right. It isn't fear. You know what? I'm going to make a new mitzvah. This mitzvah is going to be called Pesach Sheni. And that means that exactly 1 month after you bring the first Korban Pesach, the first Korban Pesach is meant to be brought on Yud Dalet, Nisan. Exactly 1 month later on Yud Dalet Iyar, if you missed out on the first Korban Pesach, you have the ability to bring a second Korban. Now, I want you to stop. What? I want you to stop and think about that for a moment. That is incredible. In other words, until then, there were only 612 mitzvahs. Not exactly, because mitzvahs were given along throughout the Midbar. They kept getting more mitzvahs. But you understand the idea that, in other words, technically, that means it would only be 612 mitzvahs. Although obviously Hashem would have given this mitzvah, but who brought about this mitzvah? It was brought about by Yidden that said, why should we sit back and just watch ourselves lose out? We want the demand. That is extremely extraordinary. What are you complaining for? You can't change the mitzvah. You can't change the Shulchan Aruch. You can't change the Torah. But the Yidden were so pained that they were missing out on the Korban Pesach. They went and they screamed and they demanded that we want it. And guess what? When a Yid screams hard enough and a Yid means it and he feels, why should I miss out? I want to be involved. Hashem says it is never too late. Hashem responded by saying, these Yidden are correct. They're going to bring about the next mitzvah, the mitzvah of Pesach Sheni. What's incredible about this mitzvah is that even if you were tamei, even if it's your own fault, it says whether you were tamei or you were far away and you just didn't bring the Korban Pesach, even if you stayed far away, you made yourself tamei. You didn't bring it just because. Hashem says, even if you were a Rasha and you said, I don't care about the Pesach Sheni, and then about Korban Pesach, and then a month later you say, what do I do? Oh, you give out. Even you, not only for people that it wasn't their fault, they were tamei, something happened. Anyone could do second chance. That is incredible. Now, I'm going to tell you the lessons. In a moment, let's first take a pause to answer our first question of what today's Sefer HaMitzvahs is. Before we do that, I'm going to ask all of you to count the Sefira with me. We're not going to do it with a bracha, but it's a minute. Like we said, it's a good custom to always say the Sefira the next morning, just in case you forgot the night before. And today is the 24th day of Sefira, which is 3 weeks and 3 days. And let's say that together. Hayoim, Arba'a, Ve'esrim, Yoim, Sheheim, Shloisha, Shavuos, Ushloisha, Yomim, La'omer. And the Sefira is Tiferes Shemanetzach, the beauty of winning, that we are soldiers and we are going to win this war against the Yetzer Hara, against Galus, which comes to our topic of Pesach Sheni. Now, what is the incredible lessons that we learn from Pesach Sheni? I want you to think about it. It is so powerful, the power of a Jew. But before I tell you the lesson, remember I told you that Pesach Sheni, the story of Pesach Sheni in the Torah is out of order. Because the story of Pesach Sheni is in Chumash Bamidbar, the fourth book. It's in Chumash Bamidbar, and the story is Bamidbar opens up, the scene of Parshas Bamidbar opens up in Iyar. And the story of Pesach Sheni happens in Nisan 1 month earlier. Why didn't Chumash then Bamidbar open up with the story? You understand my question? It's out of order. The first parsha talks about something that happened in Iyar, and the third parsha talks about something that happened in Nisan a month earlier. Why the switch? Why is it out of order? So Rashi says because we didn't want to open up with a bit of embarrassing thing. What's embarrassing? Because even though that was the Carbon Pesach, they brought the Carbon Pesach that year, but for the next 40 years, that was the only Carbon Pesach they brought in the Midbar. Could you imagine? For 40 years, we don't want to open up with the story of the Carbon Pesach because the story of Carbon Pesach that was the only story of Carbon Pesach. Otherwise, they didn't bring the Carbon Pesach till they went into Eretz Yisrael. So Rashi says we don't want to open up with talking about the Carbon Pesach because it's a sensitive topic and it's a bit of a hurtful topic because the Yidden didn't do it for the next 39 years. Whoa. Why did the Yidden do it for the next 39 years? Why not? Well, interesting, because it says that the mitzvah starts only when you come into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, because they were only meant to bring the Carbon Pesach once, the next Carbon Pesach once they entered Eretz Yisrael. Okay, I hear you. So then what's the problem? Why is that embarrassing for the Yidden? Very good. They didn't bring the Carbon Pesach for the next 39 years because they didn't need to. Says the Rebbe. This very story tells you why it's embarrassing. Because how come for 39 years the Yidden did not complain? Get it? We'll get back to that in a moment. What are the lessons for Pesach Sheni? So obviously the very, very famous lesson that you're all familiar with is the famous words of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Nita kain farfallen. It is never too late. Now, some of you think it's a very simple lesson. I know it's never too late. If I miss something, I'll do it again. That is a very, very powerful lesson. It's never too late. Because on the one hand, Sfiras Omer teaches us, as we explained last week, that it is too late. Because every day has to be counted. Every day is important. If I miss Sunday and I sleep the whole Sunday, I'll say, okay, I guess I can pay it back on Monday. Wait a minute. But Monday you got a new set of missions, a new set of chores, a new set of things you got to do. You lost already a day. So on one hand, Sfiras Omer teaches us the importance of time and how we can't miss out on a moment. But Hashem still says, even if you miss out, and it seems that you broke the rules and it's all too late, it is never, the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe, es is nita kain farfallen. It's never too late. Because Hashem always accepts the tshuva, and you could always grow from the mistakes that we made. So sometimes we make mistakes in our lives, but Hashem says, I won't only let you correct those mistakes for the future and say, okay, I made mistakes in the past, at least from now on I'll behave. I'm going to put you into a time machine. In other words, I'm going to make believe that whatever happened until now, if you are bothered by it, and you say, you know what, Hashem, give me another chance. It's not fair. I don't want to miss out. If we have that feeling, Hashem says, okay, I want you to learn from your mistakes and then continue going and strong. I will not only say, wow, I'm so proud of you. At least you changed your life. And now from the future, you have X amount of mitzvahs and you spent your life wisely. I'm going to even count the past. We could learn from our mistakes. It is never too late. And in fact, we could use our mistakes to help us serve Hashem. Like the famous story, there was a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek who had a son, and his son didn't like Cheder so much. He was a hyper diaper, as we like to call it in our house, and he would fly all over the place, and he was mucking around in class. He always dreamed about animals and racing until he became a horse trainer. That's what he wanted. He ran away from yeshiva. He stopped being frum, and he used to hang around with all the shkutzim and the horse races, and he used to trade horses. And one time his father was begging that he should come back. And this kid the whole time was like, you know what? There is more to life than horses, but whatever. I just already wasted my whole yeshiva. Never mind. It's too late. It's too late because what am I going to do? I already skipped my whole yeshiva life. I did so many averas. I'm going to also make believe like, oh, okay, I'm a big tzaddik. It's too late. I chose a stupid life. Yes, my life may be silly, but I'm enjoying it. It's all good. What could I do? The father once begged his child, please come with me to the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Tzemach Tzedek looked at the boy, and he said, the Tzemach Tzedek asked a very deep question. He looked at him and he said, my dear boy, what is better? What do you do? He said, I train horses. I love it. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, what's better, a quick horse or a slow horse? So the boy answered right away, oh, of course, a quick horse. So someone said, well, a quick horse is not so good because if a quick horse gets lost in the forest, then what happens? Imagine the horse starts going into the forest and takes a wrong turn. If it's quick, it's going to get lost quicker and quicker and quicker. So the boy thinks for a moment, and he says, yeah, but Rebbe, but at least once he finds his way out, once he finds the right turn back, he could zip out. If you're a slow horse, it might make you take you longer to get lost. But once you're lost, oh my gosh, try to get out. That's going to be deadly. And as he said that, he bit his lips, and he realized exactly why the Tzemach Tzedek was telling him the story. And he realized that Tzemach Tzedek was telling him, what's greater? Someone with a lot of excitement and hyper, and he has Mishagasin, or someone that's calm? And so, of course, someone's Mishagasin, right? So he says, yeah, but someone Mishagasin, you're hyper, and you're active, and you're always doing stuff. You get lost so much quicker. You do stuff, you get distracted, you stop learning. But then the boy, remember what the boy answered? Yes. But such a person with such excitement, once he finds the right path, he can get out right away because he is always excited about what he does. He always does everything with excitement. Then if he wants to find the way out, he can find it much quicker than anyone else. And he realized what the Tzemach Tzedek was telling him. You're a hyper boy, maybe. You're always finding your chavrama, making stuff crazy and getting involved in all these things. Yeah. And maybe that's why you got lost much quicker. But when you find a way, you will get out much quicker than anyone else. Because, my dear children, my dear boys and girls, all of our problems are not problems at all. They're actually here to help us. That's what we learn from Sfiras HaOmer. Our problems that we have, our issues that we think are issues, I don't like learning, but I don't like this, but I'm too hyper, I can't sit still. You know what? Everything, but I always like cracking jokes, I always do this. Everything that Hashem gives you, you realize, hey, it's not your enemy. It's not stopping you. It is your best friend. And that's really what Sfiras HaOmer is all about. Sfiras HaOmer is different than any carbon. Do you know why? Every carbon you're bringing to Hashem. When you bring something to Hashem, it's got to be the top type of thing. So always remember the story of Cain and Hevel. Hevel brings always the best thing, and Cain looks for some flax, some cheap grain. So when you bring grain to Hashem, one of the karbanos, what is the best grain you should bring? Of course, wheat. Wheat is the highest form of grain. So why do we bring barley for the omer? The omer, other than the carbon saita, the omer is the only other one that you bring barley. You bring barley for Hashem? So one of the reasons is because barley reminds us of who eats barley? Animals. Because it's time to remind that we have a little animal inside of us. Now, there's two ways to deal with our animal inside of us. Do you know what it's called? Either sometimes we refer to as the Yetzer Hara or the Tanya. It's a little bit different, called the Nefesh HaBahamis. We have a little bit, right? We have a neshama that says, come on, let's stop. Come on, let's do a favor. Come on, let's share. But then we have that other voice that says, but I'm not interested. I just want to, like an animal, right? I'm just in the mood of chilling. I just want to plop down on the grass and eat some more and sleep and eat some more. I'm not in the mood. Stop. Can't be bothered. Yeah? So we all have a little animal inside of it. Now I want you to imagine that you're Farmer Joe. And Farmer Joe has this big plower, and he's trying to plow the ground. And he sits for hours every single day. The sun is beating on Farmer Joe. And he's plowing and he's plowing. Let's see if we found Farmer Joe's hat. Think about it. I lost it. Okay, some other time. And all of a sudden, while he's trying to plow, it takes him 2 weeks just to plow his field. But he has this meshugana cow in his field. And every time he tries to plow, it knocks Farmer Joe over. Oh, he can vow, Meshugana, get out of here. And he gets up, tries to wipe himself off, and he continues plowing his field. And 2 minutes later, boing, and he knocks over Farmer Joe again. Farmer Joe's going with sugar. Says, I'm going to take you, nutcase of a cow, tie you up, and chuck you in. I'll chuck you into the barn. Maybe I'll shecht you. I don't know what to do with you. Okay, you're just a nuisance, and you're wrecking my job. You're ruining my life. Get out of here. Now, Farmer Joe has a neighbor, and his name is Farmer Yosef. Now, Farmer Yosef has the same problem. He sits with his plow, and he is trying to plow, and he has a crazy cow. So he ties down the cow, but he says, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. What if I get the cow to work for me? And that's what exactly Yosef does. Farmer Yosef takes his cow, and he trains him how to hold a plow. And all of a sudden he says, oh my gosh, I always thought this cow was my enemy. I always thought this cow was my problem. And I realized the best solution. Now Farmer Joe still takes him 2 weeks to do his field. It takes me now 1 day. My cow can work so much better. My cow now only takes 1 day for me to plow the field. And he does even a better job because the cow is stronger than me. You know what the story is of? You and me and all of us. We have a little cow, and we find it very disruptive. We're trying to daven. The cow comes, and we get hyper, right? We have a little cow inside of us, and we're trying to learn, and also the cow comes and disrupts us, and we're like, look, I want to learn. I'm just so distracted. I want to share. I feel like I want to share, but something inside says, don't share it. This cow is making me crazy. So some of us think I need to get rid of my cow. I have little different things that Hashem gave me, different distractions. I got to get rid of my cow. Sphere Sa'imer says, wait a minute. If you use your cow for Hashem, you'll be even a greater person than before. Let me give you one example. For example, if someone is always likes to make announcements in class, he's always the boy that has to make announcements in class. That means, so you could say, and then at home you go, Mommy, I got in trouble again. What happened? I called out in class again. I said, why are you doing this? I started calling out, oh, Gaval. And then you're in bed. On one hand, you giggle at yourself. You're like, I'm pretty funny. I'm pretty crazy. I make stuff now in the middle of class. And then you feel like, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I was just different. I wish I wasn't such a disruptive person. I always get myself into trouble, right? And that's where our cow keeps disturbing us. But then you say, wait a minute. If I train my cow, in other words, I have the ability to talk up. I am not embarrassed to speak out. So I should not be disrupting a class because that's coming from a bad place. But next time I see someone bothering someone else, wait, I have the ability. I'm that boy that's not shy to call something out. So I have to stop calling out in a class because I'm that cow now that keeps knocking over the farmer. I keep disrupting the class. But I shouldn't stop being quiet. I have a good ability. That means when no one knows what to do, I could say, hey guys, it's our teacher's birthday next week. Let's do something cool. You're the guy that's not embarrassed. Or if you are funny and you're always cracking jokes in the middle of class and you're Valdora disruption, you're always cracking jokes. But you realize if I'm funny, then I can make funny classes. I had a student once because I teach a little bit in high school, and he's always just cracking jokes. But when he started doing the different weekly thoughts, they were actually quite good. They're really funny. So you all have an animal, and sometimes we think it's our worst enemy. It's all our problems. When we're very careful, we're too meticulous about something. There's different types. We all got our own different type of animal, just like the Torah speaks about. There's a sheep, there's a bull, there's a donkey. We all got different crazinesses. So we get to utilize them. Don't forget. And that's Pesach Sheni saying, you have another chance. Don't forget about the past. Take it, and you have the future, and utilize it. Like if you wake up late for Shabbos Baruch Tehillim, you want to wake up 7 o'clock, and you say, "Oh, it's 10 o'clock already. I'm never gonna be able to say this Tehillim." So it's too late. Come on, so you'll do some now. No, it's too late. It's too late. Okay, so let's do at least a little bit now. No, it's too late. Yitzhahara says the Frierdiker Rebbe, it's never too late. Now you're upset about it. Use that upsetness and excitement that's burning inside, and say after Shabbos meal, After so the Shabbos, I'm going to say more kapitel than I thought before. And then Hashem doesn't only count the new things you did, but like we mentioned, it is never too late. So before our story, let's finish up with the rest of our questions, because there's something else incredible. What is the second lesson? What does the Rebbe say we could learn from these people? Now, it seems that these people should have been quiet. Hashem decides, Hashem's in charge. He says, this is the mitzvah. But we see when a Yid demands, then Hashem says, they're right. When Mashiach, some people would say to the Rebbe, why should we say we want Mashiach now? Why should we scream Ad Masa? Hashem's in charge. You're telling Hashem what to do? So the Rebbe says, don't you know the story of Pesach Sheni? Hashem sometimes is just waiting to see, because what do you think? Hashem, the Yidden added a new mitzvah? You think Hashem wasn't, the Yidden, right? Hashem was going to give the mitzvah probably of Pesach Sheni. I'm not just saying this for myself. Rashi says basically, the mitzvah should have been given right away. Maybe Hashem just wants to see how much do we care. Of course you can demand from Hashem, and that's exactly what he wants. He has such nachas. What do you think? Hashem was upset when those Yidden asked for the Karban Pesach? I said, what are you complaining for? I already told you the rules. Stop bothering me. Hashem said, stop nudging me. I already told you. Or he said, wow, look at my beautiful children. They can't bring the Karban Pesach. And there he said, okay, yay, slap me 5. We don't have to bring Karban Pesach this year. We're tameh. No, they said, oi. It hurts. Hashem, why should we miss out? Hashem, the Rebbe says, we have the ability to turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, why should we miss out? We don't have a base of English and we can't bring karbanis. And the Yid has the power to demand things from Hashem. Hashem, why are your children not feeling well? Which reminds me, we should say a kapitel before we end, because we were one of the people that I was very, very nervous about. My own teacher, Rabbi Chaim Levi Goldstein, who was in the hospital he was, I think, one of the first people in Grand Heights to be in the hospital for 7 weeks. And Baruch Hashem, we just heard the news right before Shabbos that he woke up and he's out and he's now in a rehab to help him because when someone's in the hospital for so long, he needs a little bit of help to get out. But Baruch Hashem, miraculously, he woke up from this Charonshki-vitis, and Baruch Hashem, miracles, our tefillos are working like no tomorrow. And we see from the story that when a Yid demands, we will get what we want. But more than that, why are our demands, like I asked, why are our demands even greater than the times of Moshe Rabbeinu? Why do you think? Think of the logic. Why, in a way, do we have a greater right to demand from Hashem? Because in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu, it was just for one Karban Pesach. They were just Tameh for one Karban Pesach. And even that they weren't happy with. But year after year, we can bring Karban Pesach. We can't bring any karbanis. We have more of a right to demand because they were just missing out on one carbon. We miss out every day karbanis. We miss out on every year Karban Pesach. And we say, Hashem, why should we miss out? For hundreds of years, your children have been bringing Karban Pesach and we miss out. We want that this year, Tavshin Pei 2020, we're going to bring the Karban Pesach. Because the Mashiach comes between the two karbanis, just like what happens if you become a ger. If a ger, which is, by the way, thank you for reminding me, our Sefer HaMitzvahs today, that we have a very special mitzvah that we cannot antagonize a ger, and we can't tell him mean things like, oh, you used to be a goy, all of a sudden you think you're a Jew now. You used to eat not kosher, all of a sudden you're using that same mouth to daven. Chas v'shalom, we have an Isser Gomer. Now, of course, you're not allowed to say that to any Jew. Are you allowed to make a born Jew feel bad? We can't make any Jew feel bad. And so why do we need a mitzvah about a ger? You're not allowed to make any Jew feel bad, and a ger is a regular Jew. Because that's interesting, because it's two averas. If you tell a Yid, if you make fun of a Yid, that is one avera. To make fun of a ger, you have two averas, because the ger is a regular Yid, so you get an avera for making fun of a regular Yid, and Hashem says, gerim they don't have regular parents because Hashem says that I'm their parents. Because when a ger becomes a Yid, they're like a newborn. So of course they have parents, and of course they honor and respect and love their parents. But Hashem says, these are my children, that you're all my children. Every Yid is my child, but they have my special protection, and that's why we're not allowed to rip off a ger, even though you cheat a ger in business to buy something too cheap or to sell them something too expensive, or like today's mitzvah, to tell them hurtful words. Although, like I said, you can't do that to any Yid. For a ger, you get a double punishment Okay, so the same thing. What happens if a ger becomes a ger between the first Pesach and second Pesach? So there's machlokes. Some people say they don't have to bring a second Pesach because they weren't a Jew during their first Korban Pesach. Same what happens if you become bar mitzvah, or what happens if Mashiach comes during right now. So this week, the end of this week, Korban Pesach comes. Can we bring the Pesach Sheni? Well, we didn't miss the first Korban Pesach because there was no first Korban Pesach. And we will. Each one has a special mitzvah. And as Hashem, we demand, and Hashem said, why year after year we've been missing out, Hashem? Lama Nigara, why should we miss out? And that is why our demand is even stronger than the Yidden of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was only for 1 year. But for us, we're crying about 2,000 years of missing Korban Pesach. And enough is enough. And the Parsha teaches us that when a Yid means it, and when a Yid demands, he will get and she will get what he and she wants. Hashem listens. Of course, our final question is, how do we celebrate Pesach Sheni today? Well, hopefully this year we'll be able to actually eat the Korban Pesach. But otherwise, the custom, of course, is number one, we don't say Tachnun. The Mincha before we do still say Tachnun. But the night for Kriya Shema and for the day we do not say Tachnun. And obviously the main minute is to eat matzah some point on that day. The bonus question is, I want your own example, how it's never too late. So today we spoke about a couple of examples, like if you missed out on something, like if you missed on Shabbos Varchim, you can then say it later in the afternoon. You can even say it with a greater excitement. I want you to give your own example of where it seems that something is too late, and that if you answer the final question, that's a bonus question, you're going to get a second raffle in the ticket. Okay? I always say that. A second ticket in the raffle. Okay, now for our Shiur last week, for all those that answered, and we're picking out our 2 winners. Winner number 1 for last week's Shiur, those that answered the question, and the winner is Shalom Ber Nakar. Mazel Tov, Shalom Ber. Okay, and now for Masib Benos. Whoever did a Masib Benos, this is not for this week. You could still get into this week's raffle, so it's not for yesterday. This is for last Shabbos. We're always going to give you a week to be able to fill out the forms. And Shazam, close your eyes and mix with your hands and pick out one. Don't look at it, just give it to me. And the winner is, oh my gosh, okay. Here's a problem because my wife said, who is this person? I said, I don't know. If they win, we'll have a bit of a problem. So your name is Tali. You did not write a last name. The email was talia.suri009. I guess I won't say at what mail, so keep your privacy. So I guess we'll email you, whoever this is. It's funny because the one person that didn't write a last name is our Masib Benos winner for Shabbos Parshas Shmini. So you can still be in the Achrim Kedoshim raffle. And don't forget, weekly, we have a number 1, our beautiful newsletter, which does include a program, a Shabbos program and Benos program, as well as this coming week, Monday, Tuesday is Lag BaOmer. Look out for our special Lag BaOmer finger majinger. Okay, and for today's special story, it is never too late. Rabbi Kalmanson from Cincinnati is falling asleep. It's already 2:00 in the morning. It's been a crazy day, and he's preparing he had to prepare for a lot of things the next day, and finally he tries to close his eyes. As soon as his eyes close, hello, Rabbi Kalmanson. He hears the voice of a lady. It sounds a little bit broken. Yes, who's calling me 2 in the morning? Rabbi Kalmanson, please, it's urgent. Could we have a conversation? Well, we're having one right now. I need to talk to you. In the morning or now? Rabbi Kalmanson just hoping he just close eyes. Please say in the morning. Please say in the morning. Now. Oh. But Shliach knows. That's it. That's what I'm here for. What my Chabad house is. If my Chabad house is closed in the evenings, but then I'll have to put out inside. I have to change my Chabad house on. I should only write Beis Chabad from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Where Chabad is 24/7. That's it. Even though it's 2 in the morning. And he says, sure, come over. She said, I'll be there. Oh, please say you'll be there in 2 minutes. I'll be there in half an hour. Oh, you can follow. But of course, he doesn't say "Oy Gewalt" on the phone. He tells this lady, "Of course, I'll be up. I'll be waiting for you." And Rabbi Kalman's is, sitting at his table, dozing off, till finally, knock on the door. Rabbi Kalmanson opens the door, and he sees a couple, an olderish couple. They're like mid, like about 50 years old or so. And he notices the husband is nabach blind, and the wife. Rabbi Kalmanson gently invites them in, sits them down, says, "How can I help you?" As soon as the lady tries to speak, she bursts out crying. She's crying and crying. "Wow, what happened?" She says, "We were like that perfect family. We got married. Everything was beautiful. We had 3 beautiful daughters. I'm not even going to talk about what happened with my husband, Abach. He had an operation, and it went wrong. And today, because of his high blood pressure, he had an issue, and now he's blind. But that's not even the main problem. Our family," and again she breaks out crying. She says, "Our family, we were so open with each other. We had the best relationship. Nothing was a secret in our family. We would tell our daughters, and our daughters would tell us we had the best relationship. There were no secrets. And then it happened." What happened? It happened. What happened? One day I walk into my daughter, my middle daughter. She was 17 years old. And I walk into her room. And all of a sudden, I see her put something under her pillow. What is that? Now, Rabbi, we have nothing to do with religion. We're just Jewish. We're not affiliated with any synagogue, no temple, not even Reform. We're not even anything. We're just Jewish. But I picked up her pillow, and there was a Christian Bible. Now, even I knew that it's not for a yid. It's the book, right? The Bible, the book of Avodah Zarah for Christians. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Yeah, I believe in that guy, Yashka." I turned white. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Well, I didn't need to." I was so upset. My heart was burning. I was on one hand so angry. Like, we never keep secrets in our family. We always discuss things. Like, why wouldn't you say anything? And of course, I was even more hurt. My daughter's reading Christian things. She says she's Christian. She bursts. She starts screaming, "How dare you! Don't get up!" As soon as she started screaming, the daughter said, "I don't care!" And she jumped out of her bed and she ran outside. I realized, oh my gosh, if I don't find her quickly, she's going to run away and never come back. And now it's be the end of that. So I asked my husband to get into the car. I had to drive, of course. Her husband, Emma, was blind. And finally, we see her in some corner waiting at a bus stop. We said, "Honey, please come home. We're not going to discuss it anymore. We'll never discuss with you. Okay, a condition. You don't say a word." And slowly she found out, Nebuch, what happened. That this girl, of course, they didn't go to a Jewish school. They went to a public school. But their teacher was a Christian. And he decided to make it his mission to convert a Jew. That's what was his little... He has Tzivus Asatan he worked for. And he said, "I need to capture a Jew." And he saw this girl and said, she looks like she'll be interested. And slowly he would become very friendly with her and then talk a little bit about Yashka. Of course, she didn't know anything about Yiddishkeit. So slowly he convinced her, but he kept telling her, and this you should never do, especially if someone tells you this, don't tell your parents. They won't understand. Don't tell anyone. No matter if anyone tells you that about anything, the first thing you should do, and you should know your parents will always be able to protect you. Even if they say, "I'll hurt your parents" or "I'll do this," it's the biggest rubbish because no one cares about you. No one cares about you like your parents. And Baruch Hashem, there's a law system and no one can hurt anyone. And if anyone ever tells you that, the first thing you always do is tell your parents. Now, this girl, she was a bit older. She felt like she was 17. She didn't need to tell anyone. She's like, he's like, only when you really, you really feel strong, you can answer your parents. Because if not, they're going to try to convince you. You know these Jews, how they work. although she was Jewish herself. And unfortunately, when it was too late, her parents had no idea that she became a full Christian believer. So we tried different things, and no one was able to help us. So someone said, go to maybe the rabbi, the Chabad rabbi in your town. And that's why I'm here, Rabbi Kalmanson. I'm sorry for keeping you up. It's already 3:30, but I'm in the morning. But it was so important. Rabbi Kalmanson, of course, realized this was important, and this was an emergency. So he says, let me think. The Kalmanson, of course, even though he was dead tired, he's fully awake now. He's so disturbed. How do I save this Yiddish girl? Is it too late? I mean, she's already fully convinced. She doesn't want to hear from any Yid. She's not interested. Is it too late? No. Pesach Sheni. Of course, I remember the words of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Netokin Farfallen. Even such a Yid, deep down, has a strong love for Hashem. I just have to find it. How am I going to get this girl? He's thinking. 2 days later, he calls up the lady. Says, look, I have an idea. We're going to invite her. We're going to make believe we're family friends. And I'm going to invite you for Shabbos. Good. Leave the rest to me. I'll do it smartly. She's so excited. She tells her family. She makes it as if it's no big deal. Oh, our friends, the Kalmansons. Yeah, remember the Kalmansons? No. Wow, we never tell you. Our friends, the Kalmansons? No. Well, our friends invite us for Shabbos. Everyone come. And of course, the middle daughter says, come on, we're just going out for a meal. Now, Rabbi Kalmanson, they came to Rabbi Kalmanson's house. He was still in the shul. And when they came home, their mouths dropped. Because when they met him, he was just wearing, a shirt, maybe even a colored shirt and a suit. And all of a sudden he comes in this kapata and his hat. They didn't know. He was like, oh my gosh, we thought he was like a cool dude. We didn't realize he's a shtetl Jew. But Rabbi Kalmanson smiled and he explained, he made Kiddush, and he explained about Challah and Shabbos. And he didn't want to ask. Of course, he had to make believe he didn't know anything. So he kept just saying things and waiting for this girl to see if she'll say something. A few times she said things during the meal a bit nasty about who says about this and who said about that and what's your proof. She was being nasty, but Rabbi Kalmanson was just ignoring it as if he didn't realize why she was being antagonistic and asking these nasty questions, and he was just continuing. Finally, his wish came true at the end of the meal. Well, I'll tell you, according to Christianity, which makes much more sense, and starts telling all the shtusim and stupidity that she was very convinced of that she learned. So he's like, I'll be honest with you, Rabbi Kalman says, look, I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about Christianity, so I'm willing to listen. I have to be very careful. A regular person can't do this. You have to speak to a Rav and do this very, very carefully. But he says, look, I don't know much about Christianity, but you don't know anything about Judaism, so I'll take a deal. You'll teach me about Christianity, and I'll teach you about, you'll tell me what you know, and I'll teach you about Yiddishkeit. Now, like I said, you can't just do this. Not everyone's allowed to do this. You have to ask a Rav and do it a very specific way. And even if you think you know what you're doing, you can't just do it on your own. But he wanted to hear all her shtusim because he had a plan. So he says, okay, such a good, so glad we could meet. Sounds like such a good conversation. Let's continue it. The meal ended 6 a.m. the next morning. They went, and she was hacking him in China. And he's like, yeah. Now, meanwhile, he's like thinking all the things she said because he was going to watch his plan. Then he said, wow, she was so excited. She was able to speak to this rabbi about Christianity. He's like, this is so interesting. Let's meet again on Monday. Oh, perfect, Rabbi. So he would let her speak, and then he would start speaking about Yiddishkeit. He didn't say any answers yet. He would start speaking about Yiddishkeit and very cool things that she always thought Yiddishkeit was simple, right? Yiddishkeit is like about, it's about Canadian balls and latkes and lighting menorah. I'm sure I know about Yiddishkeit. I know everything about Yiddishkeit. Knedlach and eat, I think you eat cheese hamantashen on Yom Kippur or something. Yeah, sure, I know it. And of course, as he explained about Shabbos, about Torah, about she was very interested, but of course, she was on a mission. He realized slowly that she was considered herself a full-on missionary, a missionary to Rachmana litzlan, And that's why you have to be so careful. You can't even speak to them. They someone stop you in the street. They someone's knock on your door. And they are trained to learn certain things, to tell you things that you don't know, to try to trick you into believing the Christianity. Missionaries, like they're on a mission to convert people. And it's a very terrible thing. And she was so excited. She was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so far with this rabbi. I'm ready. This is my third conversation with him, and he seems so interested about Christianity. And she was so excited. But meanwhile, he kept taking what she's saying, and he kept dropping different stories. And all of a sudden it happened. About the fourth conversation, he already heard everything she had to say. And he starts answering all her stupidity. How could you say this? The whole Christianity is based on Yiddishkeit. How can you say Christianity is better? And how can you say this? And how can you say God's an image? All over the Torah it says, I'm not an image. How could God be a man? Chas v'sholem. And how this? And how could Christianity say that you don't need to do mitzvahs anymore? The whole Torah says your whole stupidity is based on the Torah. The Torah says that a mitzvah can never be taken away or added. And he confused this girl completely. He's been thinking all the things she said until now, and he completely confused her mind, that everything she said was so ridiculous and so stupid and such lies. And then she realized that she never even knew so much about Yiddishkeit, and she was meanwhile eating all this other trash and believing all this garbage when she didn't even know about her own religion. So she burst out crying. She was so confused. Different conversations came up. And in the middle, she spoke, she was just, sometimes there was talk about life. And then she once mentioned about the terrible tragedy with her father. And Rabbi Collins says, I don't know why. I don't know what pushed me to say this. But I said, who knows? Maybe this whole Christianity story was just to help your father see again. It's like, I don't even know why I said that. It was like weird. Now, time passed. And she said, I want to take more interest in Yiddishkeit. And she started learning Rabbi Kalmanson and Rabbi Kalmanson's wife. And she started becoming a Frum Yid, slowly but surely. Then one day she asked Rabbi Kalmanson, you once mentioned something that maybe this whole story was really, remember we said the Tucking for Fall, that this is all really to help out something? Well, first of all, it helped. She became a Fruma Jew. She became, right before, this is the beauty of the Tucking for Fall. Before, she would have, if this never happened, she would have been a regular Jew that's not Shemer Torah Mitzvah. She could have just grown up to be, the whole family would have been, fry and pass away fry and not have, not that many mitzvahs. And this whole story not only did not brought them back to regular, this helped them all of a sudden. This the idea of Nitakim for Fall, that when we fall by mistake, unfortunately, so the idea is not to just get back up, but we get back even stronger. Now this girl was this family, whole family changed. But she said, Rabbi Collinson, you said something strange once, and maybe this whole story was to help my father out. And he was like, look, I don't know, but why don't we write to the Rebbe? Because I'm not you think I'm a holy rabbi. I'm just a rabbi. I'm not a miracle man. But my Rebbe is the Rebbe of every Jewish person, and he has special things. And he could help out. Hopefully. I mean, of course he could, but not always, right? Sometimes Hashem wants certain things in certain ways. So he said, let's write to the Rebbe. He sat down with her. She writes her whole story with tears of tshuva. But of course, as we mentioned, in Tuck came for Fall, not only did she leave the Christianity way, she became a much stronger Yid. And she's begging now for her father. So the Rebbe wrote back, first of all, you should have mezuzahs in the house. Your father should start putting on tefillin. And I want you to speak to your family, a friend, a doctor, a friendly doctor. A doctor that's a friend. And this was a famous answer from the Rebbe a lot. When the Rebbe said consult with a doctor, the Rebbe would always say, a doctor that's your friend. Because doctors, sometimes if they're not your friend, they just say what the books say. But, doctors, obviously, if their child was sick, they would do more than just according to the books, you have to do this and this. But when it's a friend, you do extra to help. Okay. So, incredibly, this daughter bought her father tefillin, and she would help. The father was blind, but she would help her father put on tefillin. And Rabbi Collinson came, and he's like, oh my gosh, he thought he was coming to put up a mezuzah. They ordered like 50 mezuzahs. This is how they connect a nice big house with tons of doors all over. I don't know, 50, but it was tons of mezuzahs. And Rabbi Kalman said, I don't know why. I just decided to ask the family doctor. It was a regular GP, the general practitioner, like a regular family doctor. It wasn't an eye doctor. So the doctor laughed and he said, why are you asking me? I'm just a family doctor. I don't know. I'm not an eye specialist. Why are you being ridiculous? So I don't know. The Rebbe said with a friend that you're the family friend doctor. But incredibly, about 3 days later, the doctor calls up and says, Rabbi Kalmanson, strange. I actually was just reading one of my medical newsletters, and a new place opened up in New York that specialized in eye surgery, and maybe these guys can help. Rabbi Kalmanson inquired, and because it was a family friend doctor, so even though obviously there were long lines of this new clinic, the family doctor got them an appointment. And they said, look, chances are low, because he's been blind for quite a while. Chances are quite low, and it's going to be extremely long operations, 4 to 5 hours. And that's hopefully everything will, that's itself a bit dangerous. People sometimes could have terrible things after, or sometimes not wake up. It's very scary, but the family thought to say, there's a bracha from the Rebbe, we're going to go for this. The father goes in. Family brought their lunches and suppers, 4 or 5 hours, no jokes. There was no phones those days. You could just distract yourself on So they were all saying some tehillim and chatting. All of a sudden, after an hour later, the doctor comes running out and his face is pale. They're like, oh my gosh. He runs into his office. He's there for 5 minutes. He runs back out, runs back into the room. He picks up his hands and like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And all of a sudden, they wheel out the patient. They bring it to like a waiting room, like, oh my gosh, what happened? The doctor comes, his face is still white and he's all nervous. So what happened? And they go into the father, that room, and the father goes, I can see! The what? The doctor's pale and says, I don't know what to say. This is a 4 or 5 hour procedure. After about an hour, I realized I'm like, finished. I'm like, wait, what? How did it end so quick? I must have forgotten like half of the procedure. I ran back to my office. That's why he told me to run to my office to check out what's going on. I must have forgot some stuff. I must have forgot some instructions. And I realized it's just so strange. After an hour, completely nothing. I completely finished the whole thing. And all of a sudden, the father gets up and he says, Baruch Hashem, just like the darkness of the tumor was gone, his physical darkness of his eyes were gone. He was able to see. And it took a little while because the eyes have to adjust. Within about 3 months, he started driving. And that is the power that it is never, ever too late. Everyone have a good week, and hopefully we'll see you this weekend in about 5 days in the Beis HaMikdash, bringing our Carbon Pesach Sheni. Yay! Don't forget, let's say Lam Natseach and give tzedakah for all those that still need a refuah shalema. And don't forget to fill out the questions. Okay. Lam Natseach Mizmar LeDavid Yachadinai B'Yar Tzara Yisagem Hashem Eliyach Yishlach Ezecha Kodesh U'Mitzion Yisadecha Yizkarcha Mincha Yisecha V'Eilos V'Yidash L'Sela Yitelucha Tova V'Chol Atzascha Yimalei V'Nanu B'Shosach V'Shem Leinu Nidgal Yemale Adinai, Kol Mishal Yisacha, Ati Yadai, Tigesh Adonai Mishicha, Yaneyu Mishmei Kachay, Big Emurai, Zeisha Yeminai, Eila Baracha, Eila Vasusim, Anachnu B'Shem Adinai Leheinu Nasker, Heima Karu V'Nafalu V'Anachnu Kamnu V'Nisayda, Adinai Hashia, Hamelech Haneinu V'Yem Kereinu, Refuah Shalema, Kol Am Yisrael. Amen. Amen.